All right, everybody. Hey, good afternoon. Julia Bell and I are on this Zoom call with Dr. Tate Cockrell. He is coming to our association May the 2nd and 3rd, and it's going to be he and his wife Wendy will be performing and leading us through a marriage conference those 2 days, Friday night, Saturday morning, all the way through lunch. And man, we cannot wait on that. And Julia, I know that you're excited about asking Dr. Cockrell some questions, and so I will turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, spending a couple of minutes talking about what our churches can expect in their time with you. What should they expect to experience during this workshop?
Julia, all sorts of weirdness, like having deep conversations with their spouse in the middle of a conference. No, I'm just kidding. Like, we don't do any of that. What they can expect is what I would consider and what others have said is some deep biblical teaching that's also insanely practical about how to have a marriage. Our conferences are entitled Marriage That Lasts a Lifetime. So how to have a marriage that's biblically robust, but then also the practical skills of marriage. So typically we do 5 sessions. The sessions are around an hour each. We cover topics like the biblical foundations of marriage, personality differences, communication, conflict resolution, rekindling intimacy. Those are the kind of topics that we cover. One of the funnest parts of the weekend is I'll teach all of our sessions, but at the end of each session, Wendy comes up on the stage. She and I have a conversation that we call Real Talk, where we just talk very, very openly and very transparently about our own marriage, specifically as it relates to whatever the content was that we just presented. And so we've gotten just tons of feedback. Wendy and I do about 35 of these conferences a year. And by and large, overwhelming majority of people, when we do surveys and say, what did you like? The number one thing that tends to be is the real talk time, the 15-minute conversation that she and I have at the end of every session. So that's kind of the basic structure format and kind of what folks can expect if they show up. We don't do any weird, like, here's a basin, watch your spouse's feet, and like stuff that just wigs people out. We don't do any of that. So they can have conversations with other couples around the table, and we may ask you to pray together at the very end. But aside from that, that's kind of the content of what we're going to be doing.
That is a relief to a lot of listeners, I'm sure. The CMBA is opening up the opportunity to be a part of this. Of course, we strongly encourage our pastors and their wives, church staff and their wives, but we're opening this up to everybody, couples from across the Midlands of South Carolina in our footprint. So let me ask you, why should couples prioritize spending a weekend attending this conference?
Well, a couple of things I would say about that, Julia. One is I would say don't even just limit it to couples who are married. You may even have some couples that are getting married. And what I would have done, 32 years ago when my wife and I married, what I would have given to be able to have some of the content that Wendy and I are presenting right off the bat when Wendy and I got married. Our premarital counseling consisted of our senior pastor telling us, love Jesus more than you love one another, and everything will be okay. That's a great piece of advice. And it's a principle that we teach in our conferences. It is a little incomplete. It's not the only thing that we need to learn to have healthy marriages. And so I would say couples really need to carve the time out, because in the day in which we live today, the busyness of life, particularly if they're in ministry, particularly if they have children, you can very quickly fall into sort of the doldrums of just having a marriage that's surviving, but it's not thriving. Ministry has crowded out date nights. Ministry has crowded out, weekly talk time together. It's crowded out, their ability just to spend time doing an activity together. And so doing a weekend like this is a great opportunity to kind of get a recharge on kind of where they are, build on what's healthy, correct some things that maybe need some growth, and then learn some things that they could implement immediately. I mean, as soon as the very first night back in their hotel room, they could immediately implement, or if they're going back to their house, they could immediately implement the things that we're talking about, in the conference. I know for Wendy and I, when we can go away to something, if we can, even if it's just down the street as opposed to just doing something in our home, it means a lot more than, say you go to your local church and, you go to a Sunday school class. That's great. But some intensive focused time for an extended period, you're talking about a night and a morning where we're just talking about marriage. It can make a real difference in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That is a perfect segue to my next and final question, which is, what are some things that you've seen God do in marriages and even ministries through the conferences you've led?
Man, it's a great question, and I'll try not to get choked up as I say this. A week ago, I was in Virginia. We were leading a marriage conference outside of Midlothian, Virginia. Conference went swimmingly. It was fantastic. We had a great time. We got tons of comments, tons of great feedback afterwards of the difference that the conference made. And then last night, I was leading a conference in the same town, but a parenting conference at a different church. I finished leading the parenting conference. I hopped in my Jeep to drive back home late last night. A lady came, actually, she saw me leaving. She put her hand up and had me stop. I rolled down the window and she came over and she said, I just wanted you to know my son and his wife were at the conference last weekend at the other church. Their marriage is on the rocks. They were contemplating divorce. They came to your conference. They've experienced kind of a new vision for what their marriage can be, and they've committed that they're going to work on their marriage and they're going to stay together. And she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I just wanted to say thank you. Like we've been praying for something like this, and your conference was kind of the impetus to help them realize that they can do it. That's a very recent, it literally happened last night, I guess probably about maybe 16 hours ago. That happened, but that story is probably echoed a couple of dozen times every single year. Like we hear those stories. I'll get emails on the website, or I'll have a pastor who'll call me or email me a couple of weeks after the conference is over, and he'll say, hey, I just wanted you to know there was a couple in our church. I've had a couple of pastors. In fact, I bumped into a pastor at the SBC convention this last year, and he came up to me. And there's a thing, I'm not going to spoil it for the people who are listening to this, because you need to hear it at the conference. But there's something that we teach at the conference that you can implement almost immediately. And I had a guy who came up to the Southeastern booth at the SBC this last year, and he said, hey, I just wanted you to know, my wife and I, we implemented, the thing that you guys taught us at the marriage conference. It's absolutely transformed our relationship. And he was a senior pastor at the church that had brought me in. I wasn't specifically doing it for the pastors. I was doing it for the attendees. He said, but we decided to implement it, and it's absolutely been a game changer for our relationship. So whether they're a pastor or they're not a pastor, the principles will apply universally.
It's incredible. Well, Jamie, I know you probably have something to share as well. I would just share with our listeners who are listening to this conversation and who are interested and want to sign up. All the information that they need is on our website, which is columbiametro.org. You can register that way. You can check it out on the calendar, and please share, share, share. We want the news information about this conference to reach everyone in our churches.
Yeah, Julia, last year, last probably January, February, my wife and I had an opportunity to experience the marriage conference at an AMS retreat. And Tate and Wendy came down for that. And he actually mentioned there, the idea of associations, coming together, and that's where the Lord just really spoke to my heart and said this would be a blessing to marriages, to families all over the Columbia metro area. One of the reasons I'm convinced of this, one of the reasons that the Columbia area is in the shape that it's in, morally, spiritually, is because you know moms and dads are not loving Jesus, and because they're not loving him, they're not loving each other, and it's led to all sorts of chaos all over our area. And so I would just encourage people, when you sign up, and we have made it extremely affordable. I mean, we really have. It's free. I mean, you can't beat that for our ministers, our staff members, and their wives. But for everybody else, it's $25. That's a way also for you to just love your pastor and his wife, or your youth minister and his wife, or whoever it is. And I would say when you show up, you will receive solid, super, super solid biblical teaching, and you are going to receive extremely practical, as Tate even mentioned this earlier. It is going to be super, super practical for you, just things that you can take away, as he even mentioned, implement right off the bat. And so we hope that you will sign up, get your churches involved, sign them up. And we just can't wait to hang out together May the 2nd, 3rd. We're going to have good food, right? Good meal Friday night, good breakfast Saturday morning. And hey, we'll have you back. Like, you'll be done at lunch. And so hopefully we will have people sign up. We look forward to seeing you guys there.